So the other day I was scrolling on the artist formerly known as Twitter when I saw a tweet from a real life US congressperson. And the tweet happened on Monday while the stock market was kind of melting down, and I didn't want to mention the name of this particular congressperson because it's not really relevant to the video and I don't want to isolate one particular group or another. But they did post it from their official congressional page on Elon's app, so if you'll want to check that out, go for it. Okay, so here's the tweet. These brokerage firms are reporting errors for retail investors while institution investors are able to make trades. That's too many problems to be a coincidence. Controlled to stop panic selling in order to prevent a crash. Go ahead, call me a conspiracy theorist. I could care less. I'm pretty sure they meant I couldn't care less, but that's relatively unimportant. The next part is what made my brain go, huh. But I'll challenge you back. Prove me wrong. Now this tweet is a prime example, like a textbook example of the burden of proof fallacy, which is what I want to talk about today. Now, a logical fallacy is the use of faulty reasoning when making an argument, thus rendering that argument invalid, misleading, or unsound. The burden of proof fallacy occurs when somebody makes an argument that requires some sort of proof, but instead of providing that proof themselves, they claim that somebody else needs to provide evidence to disprove their claim. It's common with the burden of proof fallacy for an argument to not be falsifiable. And then when it's not falsifiable, meaning you can't prove it false, people will then assume that because it can't be disproven, that means it's true. Now, you will hear some people sometimes saying that it is impossible to prove a negative. And this isn't always true. Let's say you've got a party and somebody is saying that Stacy was at the party. You could prove that Stacy was not at the party if you have record of everybody that attended the party and you could show that Stacy was not one of the people there, or if you could show that Stacy was actually somewhere else during the time of the party. And in this particular case, it is possible to disprove the argument put forth by somebody, but that does not change the fact that the onus is on them to prove their argument and supply evidence for their argument when they make it. To put it another way, even though you can prove Stacy was not at the party, it would still be improper for them to say Stacy was at the party, prove me wrong, and then assume that their argument is correct just because you aren't proving them wrong, or assume their argument is correct until you prove them wrong, even though they supplied no evidence for Stacy being at the party. When they make the claim, the onus is on them to support the argument. We'll move on from the hypothetical and go back to our tweet from earlier. The claim that was being made was that while the market was crashing, these brokerages colluded with investment banks to stop or slow down the sell-off to allow the investment banks to trade to be able to get out of some of their positions while freezing out a lot of the retail investors. In this particular scenario, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to prove that this did not happen. You could say that we have absolutely no evidence that the brokerages and the investment banks work together in this particular fashion, but you can't provide any proof that it definitively shows that there was no kind of communication or anything like that, because that communication could take place in a bunch of different ways, and you are not able to cover all of those bases with all of the people that work in all of those different brokerages and financial institutions. And these shadows of doubt is where conspiracy theorists live, which brings us to our next line in that tweet, which is, call me a conspiracy theorist, but. In this particular instance, I'm glad that they admitted that they're not a conspiracy theorist. However, I should say that conspiracy theorists, along with kind of operating very well in these shadows of kind of dark unknown, we don't know what's going on here, that's ripe for people to just kind of fill it in with whatever comes to their mind. These areas are also where conspiracy theorists tend to use a lot of logical fallacies. The burden of proof fallacy is one of the fallacies that is regularly used. If you can't prove that X group is not doing Y, then they must be doing it. And the thing here is, there are real conspiracies that happen. A conspiracy is just a secret plan by a group to do something harmful or illegal. It does not take a rocket scientist to understand that conspiracies absolutely do happen. But when conspiracy theorists grasp at straws and use layers and layers of logical fallacies in their arguments, it diminishes the trust that anybody else has in any of the arguments that they're making, even if some of those arguments are correct. Ultimately, that's going to lead us into a whole bunch of other logical fallacies. And I'm trying to limit this to one per video. So the last thing that was said in that tweet is, I challenge you back, prove me wrong. Which we now know is just not putting the burden of proof on the right person. If you make a claim, you are responsible for supporting and providing evidence and proving your claim. If you do that, if you make a claim and you're like, hey, this is my claim, here's the evidence that I have for it, and it's fairly strong evidence, it is then up to somebody else to either dispute your evidence and the validity of your evidence, or provide evidence that would disagree with or disprove your particular argument. But you don't get to just from the outset say, this is my argument, I have no proof of it, if you want me to be wrong, prove it wrong. I hope you were able to learn something new today. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button down below. This is a brand new video type that I'm doing, and I want to see kind of like how it does, how people like it, all that type of stuff. If you want to see more like this and you have other fallacies you want me to cover, or you have questions about anything that I covered in this video, please leave that down below in comments. I will be monitoring those and responding back to people. Anyway, that is all. I will see you next time, and have a fantastic rest of your day.